Welcome one and all. It's time for another red hot, sizzling, spicy, extra succulent Kings of War battle report. Abyssal Dwarfs versus Forces of the Abyss in a continuation of the little spice-tacular campaign that's been going on, featuring Bracky Barker attempting to invade the Abyssal lands, unsuccessfully so far it has to be said, and for this report I'm joined by my opponent. Some may know him as, let's see, maybe Mr. Dead Zone, perhaps? A bit of a Dead Zone community legend. Some might know him as Ian. Hello there.
Hello there.
How are you this fine evening?
Well, thank you. Ready to rock and roll in this epic.
It is indeed an epic. So, as we remove the thumbnail here, you can see the first shot of the wide shot of the battlefield here. A lot of stuff on the table, 2,500 points. And the scenario here is kill, but with a spicy twist. So, since you conjured up this twist, would you like to talk us through the precise rules for this scenario?
Yeah, sure. So following on from the last battle, which was Bracky still trying to launch an invasion on, well, essentially his own territory that the Abyssals had taken over in his absence. Whilst they did fail on that occasion, they have since made their way around the edges. They found a way in while the Abyssals weren't looking, and so they've finally they forced the Abyssals to a pitched battle. So this is a big battle. You see, we've got big armies here today. This is the full strength of both sides to see who can push on into the core of the land, who's gonna be master of the day. And so the scenario is kill. But in addition to that, the Abyssal gods have taken a keen interest in this because it's a derby match, if you will. And they're not favouring one side, but they do want to see who can take best opportunity. So there will be one turn of the game where the gods are paying particularly close attention, at which point both armies will try to do as much killing as possible. And so, on a randomly determined turn of the game, there will be triple points available for anything killed.
Very, very exciting. So that's going to be determined by a dice roll at the start of the game to see whether turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 will be worth triple points. No chance of a turn 7 because the Abyssal gods can't count that high. So the 2,500 point lists here. Let's go through the forces of the Abyss first. So this is the army that you recently took to Battle Masters, I believe, that did quite well. Is that right?
Is correct, yes. Managed 4th place at Battle Masters just a week and a half ago.
So if we start out as I look at it on the left flank, so right in the top left there, we've got a little unit. So do you want to start talking us through the list from left to right here?
You'll recognise the Tortured Souls have taken up their familiar position on the right flank of my side of the board. And moving along, we have Molochs. Molochs with Boots of Striding. No, sorry, I apologise. They have the Brew of Haste. They're going to have to clear those walls before they can really get a move on. But being out on that side, they wanted to move quickly to find some action. So they have the Brew of Haste.
Got a little flying hero by the look of things here.
Yep, looking after that side in terms of inspiration and assisting combat is Mighty Busu. So this is the Abyssal special character who inspires all and has brutal D3 to add to any combat she's involved in.
Mighty Busu.
While she is typically quite bad at hitting things herself, that brutal D3 is always in play, even if she swings and misses. Moving along, we have Gargoyles. Nothing special about them.
Well, don't say that. Gargoyles are special in their own right, I think.
Only in their minds. Then we have the core of the foot troops in the middle here with a horde of lower abyssals with the hammer of strictly measured force. and a regiment of Abyssal Guard.
What have they got? They got the... Is that the
They've
blade
got
of
two-handed
slashing?
weapons.
Is that
No,
blade of
no,
slashing on them, or is that imaginary?
that belongs to Champion Longdong, who stood next to them.
Oh, I see. There he is, yeah. The Abyssal
Yep.
champion there.
Champion Longdong, right in the middle of the line. He's got the blade of slashing, because he's very good at hitting, so it just makes sure he gets 5 out of 5. And then on the other side of him is another unit of Molochs with above model strength. It's very fashionable these days. They have the boots of striding ready to vault over the hedges in front of them. And moving on to the left-hand side of the board, we have the first units of Fire Team Alpha. Yes, they're back. Unit of Flame Bearers, a Abyssal Warlock looking after them. He's got Bane Chant today and the Conjurer's Staff to help make sure it goes off when he needs it to. And then a little group at the end there, you can see more Flame Bearers behind a regiment and a troop of Succubi. Is an Efreet lurking about behind the Succubi.
Yeah, you can just see him standing atop that blue flame there.
That's the one, yep. And right on the left-hand side is the big man himself, the Archfiend of the Abyss.
Well, those are the forces of the Abyss. So my initial thoughts on seeing this army are there are a few key units to avoid, particularly because I'm known for bringing lots of Defense 6 in my Abyssal Dwarves. So the things I would like to avoid, the Hammer of Measured Force unit, and probably the Molochs are most likely to do damage. In terms of shooting, obviously that little fire team you've got with those 3 fiery units all hanging out together is the thing I'm probably most concerned about. So,
Rightfully so.
yes, onto the Abyssal Dwarves. So we'll have to actually go back here to the wide shot so you can see Susan Basusu there, all the way out on her own on the left flank, facing off against a good, maybe about 1/5 of your army there. And then, going back to the close-ups, we've got 2 hordes of lesser obsidian golems and a greater obsidian golem backed up by an ironcaster, and he has fireball and surge. So, very handy. Gargoyles. These ones are definitely special. So, gargoyles versus gargoyle action potentially coming up. Then, as we move along, we've got Brachy. So, 2 named individuals in this list, as I have done many a time in the past. Brachy bringing Susan along for the ride this time. 2 regiments of Immortal Guard. We've got the Hellfire, which hasn't been fielded too many times by me yet, and it's got the upgrade so that it's inspiring, and it's got all kinds of crazy special rules. It's got inspiring, it gives wild charge +2 to infantry, so really just those units that are standing right next to it. And the various other rules that it has, it's got brutal for only dwarf units though, so very weirdly specific, some of the rules on this thing. It's also got a little shooting attack on it. Then behind them we've got a horde of grotesques, and they have boots of striding, Sir Jesse's boots of striding. And then over on this flank we've got an overmaster on ancient winged half-breed, and that one has the dwarven ale to try and mitigate any annoying waivers that happen to pin flyers down, which is a thing that can happen frequently in this game. So, oh, you can even see Susan and how alone she is on the battlefield. The terrain, there's not really too much blocking because they're pretty big, beefy armies, so all the terrain is really just going to be a bit of a hindrance for charging for the most part. And for going first, I believe I won the roll-off to choose whether to go first or second, and I chose to go second here. My thinking is that the fire team, let's go back to a wide shot here. So the fire team, all over here, they're not going to be able to do much in the first turn, really, are they? So I'm thinking if they go first, that's 1 less turn they'll be able to shoot, assuming they survive the game. And there's not really a whole lot of flanking going to be taking place against my army, because anything that flies forward is immediately being threatened by Susan. And yes, so flanking the lesser obsidian golems isn't that big of a concern at this stage. There's nothing hugely fast here that would mean I couldn't just turn left and then face them all. So I'm thinking going second may be the best option here, because limiting the amount of shooting, and that's really the only reason. Because as you know, I normally like to go first and just plough everything forward.
Funny you say that, because my first thought was, oh, he's put his army all over one side. This will definitely mean some flanking on that side where Susan is.
Yes, I wasn't overly concerned, but we'll see whether that actually comes to fruition. So, turn 1 for the forces of the Abyss. Now, clearly there's movement forward. I wouldn't call it flanking yet. They haven't turned to face my army, but they are staring directly at Susan, staring down into her beady little gargoyle eyes. So what's the plan over on this flank?
Would you like to discuss which turn was nominated as triple points?
Oh yes, that could be important. So turn 5 was rolled. So
the Abyssal gods were good enough to inform us in advance.
Yes, so anything killed in turn 5 is going to be worth triple points. So even if you're just wiping the floor with the enemy before then, if they then get a few kills in turn 5, it could swing the balance.
I thought it'd be just an interesting twist to kill, where that if on turn 4 you might actually decide, even if you got a nice attack lined up, you might prefer to hold it back because you know it'd be worth more the next turn. But by delaying, could you actually cost yourself that advantage? You know, it could it incur some interesting tactical decisions.
Yes, a top player I'm sure could engineer situations where the enemy are facing the wrong way, so they can't do anything during the turn they choose not to kill them, and then have easy pickings in turn 5. But we'll see if we're up to that level, or whether we even bother planning for the twist. So, flank.
I was planning from the outset, I assure you.
Well, talk us through it then.
Okay, so I started with the right flank, where there's basically no one facing off against me, but no one significant. So it was a case of moving the Torch of Souls forward and moving Mighty Busu forward. They're both out there as bait for Susan. Because if she takes either one of them, then the Molochs are going to go in and beat the shit out of her.
That would be true, yes. And if we look at the wider shots, there's not as much of an advance going on the rest of the battlefield yet.
No, the centre was happy to wait for you to come to me, because there's no point killing you until turn 5. And on the very left-hand side of my side, right on the picture, just a little bit forward, so the Succubi troop go forward to bait the Ironcaster forward, and again with the Archfiend and other Succubi stood behind, ready to punish him if he made that mistake.
Oh, the Overmaster. Yeah, I see.
That's the one, yep.
And a little bit of shooting damage done, which presumably is that from your lightning bolt toting champion there?
Yes, Long Dong shot out 5 lightning bolts, got 3 wounds for it, which was a good effort from him.
Not bad. Onto the Immortal Guard. A lot of my army has regeneration. The stuff that doesn't have regeneration is typically defense 6. So it's a tough series of nuts to crack. The Immortal Guard, even though they are really tough, they're probably a weaker point in the army. Weirdly, considering how tough they are. But they have taken some wounds there. And that's how we're looking. So my plan for turn 1, Susan, there's the temptation to just charge a unit, but then looking at the rules for the Mighty Busu and seeing Duelist on there, I thought I probably don't want to get into that fight. So Susan is just going to run away. And then I'm going to use this unit of golems, ideally, to turn and just hold up that side of the battlefield, because I'm fairly confident that I can go into crunchy mode and stomp through everything over here. I want to hold up like everything to the left of this line, really, with just a couple of units, hopefully, and form like a defense line in this area of walls and difficult terrain to make it charging into a defense 6 wall like that with difficult terrain hindering you is never fun. So that's my plan there. Gargoyles are just going to delay the enemy when they get the chance as well. So that's my plan. So as you can see, that's what's going on. These golems have obviously been surged forward by the Ironcaster there. Susan has now come all the way over here, out of charge range of anybody, to hide. The Overmaster hasn't charged in and taken any bait, has just gone up behind these hedges. Everything else has advanced. There are some charges open to the forces of the Abyss next turn, but no multi-charges as far as I could tell. Maybe a couple of small ones, but not on any of my units I would be concerned about losing. And the Hellfane, with its cheeky little pistols, shoots off the troop of succubi. So that was nice. I wasn't actually expecting them to die. I was expecting to do a couple of wounds and maybe get lucky and waver them, perhaps. But they are dead. So what was running through your mind when that first blood was spilt on the battlefield there?
I'm not sure I can broadcast those kinds of thoughts.
Well,
I was displeased.
as you should be. So I was talking before the game about how I don't think the Hellfane is really worth its points. But that doesn't mean it's bad. Because even though, with the upgrade, it's over 300 points, the fact that it does have a little shooting attack means that it makes it a little bit more versatile than the thing you're obviously going to compare it to, which is the Greater Obsidian Golem. It doesn't have the drawback of not being able to move at the double. And even if you're not moving at the double, you can still shoot with it, with the old steady aim as well. And it does hit on 3s in combat, so the less attacks is kind of balanced out by that. And all the ridiculous special rules it has piled upon it. It's not bad, it's just maybe a little bit too expensive. So that is how the battlefield is looking at the moment. So my plan here, I would very much like this unit and this unit to move, probably them ideal as well, because the things I want to kill are Fireteam Alpha, because I've got multiple units that can slam into them and then kill them maybe in one go and then turn round and face back at the enemy again. If we think about the Overmaster on Ancient Winged Halfbreed, if I fly 20 inches forward, then I can't always face precisely the way I want, because I'd be limited by just a single turn, a single pivot. And sometimes you want to do that before you fly the 20 inches. So if you can charge into something and kill it, then you basically get the free pivot of wherever you want. So that's my plan with him. But these guys want to be out the way ideally first before I start charging in willy-nilly. So I'm hoping that this hindered charge here is taken, and we'll see if anyone wants to go after the Immortal Guard. The Hellfane is slightly further back because it didn't move out the double because it fired, so that's not really a viable target for anybody. And maybe this guy, but that would be kind of a suicide mission, charging into the Defense 6 Hellfane that's flanked by all these other units. So we'll see what the forces of the Abyss have in mind this turn. So you want to talk us through your plan here?
Yeah, so turn 2. The number of targets had been presented to me, and I couldn't help myself. First check to see if the Archfiend could get into the right flank of the leftmost unit of Immortals, the ones apart just to the left of the Hellfane. See, from his initial position, he was actually in their flank, but he was about half an inch short, which was disappointing because I quite fancied that.
Yes,
so I
don't think I even particularly measured for that beforehand, because
no, I don't think you had.
Yeah, I wasn't factoring in these units as things that were going to survive too long, because they're, even though, as I was saying, they're tough, they're clearly a point that you feel you can kill compared to the rest of this stuff.
I agree entirely. So I decided to do that. So I sent in what units I could onto the right-hand unit, to the Archfiend and the Succubi in a double charge. And the left-hand unit, I decided to give the beans from Fireteam Alpha and the Ifrit all the fireballs and firebolts all the time. I thought that'd be 2 units out my way.
We'll see if that comes true. And then you've taken this charge here, a double charge in fact. Which is...
So this is a centre of the board.
Yes.
So having put yourself in range of the Molochs with Boots of Striding, they did vault that hedge, and Champion Longdong went in to lend a hand. He was hindered by the hedge, but he doesn't mind.
Indeed. So there's going to be hindrance going on there, so I'm fairly confident that this unit isn't going to die, with the inspiring nearby as well, but you never know. And that's how it looks from there. So what I'm thinking here is, if some of these units survive, I'm in a very good counter-attack position. If, for example, this guy ends up just sitting there, failing to kill this unit somehow, then there's a potential flank there with the Overmaster, maybe. I'm not sure if it's front or flank. But either way, the Hellfane can get involved. The Grotesques down here. This unit, if it survives. Bracky is in town. And also, I'm eyeing up this charge here with the Overmaster into those Flame Bearers. So, on this side, Gargoyle time. What's going on here? It looks like a bit of a typical Gargoyle blocking strategy.
Yeah, well, I figured Champion Longdong and the Molochs probably weren't going to get through a horde of lower obsidian golems in one go. So I needed to make sure that their friends on the side here weren't going to flank charge them. So I went and parked some gargoyles in front of them. Classic gargoyle tactic.
Indeed. And then over on this side, the fact that Susan's run away, presumably there's nothing for this lot to worry about now, so they can actually commence with their plan of flanking my army. Is that correct?
Full speed ahead, just as far as possible.
Okay, so then we've got some shooting, and all this flamey badness gets the Immortal Guard unit up to 10 wounds, so it's by no means a guaranteed kill from that point, because they are inspired, of course, but they do go down. So there's one unit dead. Then the Molochs and the Abyssal Champion only manage 5 wounds on the Lesser Obsidian Golems, which I'm sure you were disappointed about.
Very much so. Given that the Molochs were not hindered, only Champion Longdong. Yeah, a tough nut to crack, I think was the expression of the day.
Yes, tough nuts all round. However, this tough nut does go down as well. So both units of Immortal Guard are dead. This one took an even slightly larger nerve roll to kill them, but they're also gone now. So 2...
I think that was an interesting roll, wasn't it? Because didn't I roll 1 short and then checked my sheet and went, the Archfiend, he's brutal.
Yes.
He's brutal.
If you fail a nerve check by 1, always desperately scramble to your army list to see if something has brutal.
Find a special rule to save you.
Yes. It's like whenever you're about to take off a unit, quickly glance over the rules. Anything that could prevent this? Nope. And then in you go to take the unit off.
It's the last act of a desperate man, but on this occasion it worked.
Yes. So. And I heard someone knocking at a door. I'm just going to go and look out the window to make sure it isn't my door. And then I'll return in a second.
Those I should attempt to fill or something. These Abyssal Dwarfs, they're intimidating to say the least. There's a lot of Defense 6 and even more Defense 5 in this army. And I wasn't really looking forward to it, because although the Molochs have got Crushing 2, the rest of the army's a bit lacking in that real hitting power. But still optimistic. Team Alpha gained a bit of a reputation at Battle Masters. They proved their worth time and time again, firebolting the crap out of people. It's a steady aim and piercing 1. Pretty potent stuff. Looking forward to see what they achieve here today. I mean, I know, but you don't know yet.
Hello.
Oh God.
It was my door. An evening Amazon delivery. So, I'm sure you've just been entertaining the people while I've been absent.
I was filling.
Hello to the audience, by the way. We've got Graham, Sam and Peter in there. Good evening to all of you. So, and Jonathan, who's just piped up. So, where were we? Okay, this is how the battlefield is looking. What is my plan now? So, what I wanted to do here, because This unit is quite far advanced compared to the Archfiend. The ideal plan is a double charge with the Hellfane and the Grotesques into the Archfiend. The Overmaster charges the Flamebearers behind. Bracky charges after the Warlock, because even if he can't kill it in one round, there's a decent chance that he'll be able to take it out in two. And then I can ignore this unit, maybe double charge the Molochs perhaps with the Lesser Golems and the Greater Golem. Lesser Golems into the Gargoyles, kind of boxing off this area. And that unit should be left with no targets, in theory. That's what I was theorising before this turn. So, turn 2. Well, Bracky does go into the Warlock. So there's phase 1 of the plan, but he actually manages to take it out in one go, which is nice. Nice little bonus, so he's actually useful. However, I did make a slight mistake here, because lazily, I didn't really look at his position and see that he was still sitting in difficult terrain after the charge. So what I should have done really is overrun out of the difficult terrain, so next time when I charge something else I wouldn't be hindered. But that's a minor thing. The Overmaster on Ancient Winged Halfbreed did some damage to that unit. I'm trying to see the exact number there. Looks like about 6, perhaps. 5 or 6?
It was, I think it was 6, yeah.
Okay, so not enough to kill them in this round, but safe from any enemy combat units, because there's nothing really looking in this direction. And so, the Grotesques, they performed well here. They had to go into the Archfiend on their own, because there wasn't enough space for the Hellfane and the Grotesques to both go in there with the correct amount of pivots. You'll notice the Hellfane's turned backwards, by the way. That's because with its long snout pointing about 75% extra of the way off its base, then Mantic, really, why design a model this way? It is a pet peeve of mine.
They all wanted big stuff. Everybody wants big stuff.
Everyone wants big stuff, not necessarily big noses on that big stuff, though. It is a pet peeve of mine when miniature companies design models that overhang their base significantly. GW do it a lot. Anyway, so you can see that this Succubus regiment had the Hellfane in the front. Susan flew over into the flank, and then after Susan had flown in, the Lesser Obsidian Golems went into the Molochs, and the Greater Obsidian Golem went into the Abyssal Champion, because I don't think it was possible to get them both into this unit. With the plan,
there's not enough space.
Yes, not enough space, and Susan had to go into that flank first so she could actually see them before the unit slid into position, I think, here. And then this
I think what you wanted to do was send in countercharge with the mini golems and send in the big one to the Molochs as well.
Yes.
But because Champion Longdong was right on that corner, you couldn't actually get to them without passing through him, so you had to deal with him first.
Yes. So charged into him, did manage to take him out in one go though, as you can see here, and then overrun just in front of this unit. Lesser Golems took out the Gargoyles, and the Molochs clearly not dead. I can't see exactly how many wounds they're on, but in this kind of duel, I typically expect the Golems to come out on top in this one-on-one matchup. Because if you compare their stat lines and their points, I think the Golems possibly are a few points cheaper than they would be purely in combat terms, just because they're a shambling unit. So you have to invest extra to get someone to surge them around. So I think they're actually better statistically than the Molochs in a straight-up fight with their vastly higher defense. Because, one thing that was jumping out by this point... Yes. One thing jumping out by this point in the game is that most of my units, when they're fighting, were wounding on 2s with Vicious.
Wounding on 1s. That's what I call it, wounding on 1s.
Yes, it was very apparent throughout this game that when I was making my wound rolls, there were very few failures. In fact, the first few turns, I don't think I failed a single Vicious roll. So, nearly all the hits, almost throughout the game, looking at the various units, because most of my stuff, I've got lots of big stuff with at least crushing 2, And then you don't have really much above defense 4 in your army, do you? So nearly always wounding on 2s with vicious.
There's only a couple of characters with defense 5.
The gargoyles here, they were thinking about doing a cheeky park in front of multiple units bit of shenanigan, but they decided, you know what, just to be on the safe side, how about we just charge that unit there instead? Because I don't have to worry about how many pivots and where I can land within an inch of certain things. You just fly straight in with a charge, simplifies everything. So they go in there, pin them back in that spot, and I'm defending this area of obstacles and difficult terrain, as I was describing earlier. So there's how it looks. Yes, there is a lot of orange for whoever commented on that earlier. Plenty of orange in this game. And my army kind of in this sort of shape here, with the Molochs and the Succubus kind of within my lines, and then this bit of the Abyssal Force yet to bring its might to the game. But if they're just biding their time until turn 5, of course, in this game, that could be beneficial with the triple points on offer for anyone that's joining us late. Anything killed in turn 5 is worth triple points. So on turn 3 for the Forces of the Abyss, looking at the state of the battlefield after 2 turns, what are your general thoughts and what's your plan going forward here?
Well, I wasn't a big fan of how much you killed in that turn, particularly the characters. I felt the Abyssal Warlock probably should have stood up to an individual charging him, but he went.
A hindered individual charging him.
Yeah, and Champion Longdon getting cut down in one go by the Great Obsidian Golem. I mean, he's got a nerve of 15.
It was a tasty roll.
I was shaken by that.
Shaken to your very core.
And it really left me without a lot of inspiring. Well, because with that and the Archfiend gone, that only leaves Mighty Busu as an inspiring choice. So much of the army is now uninspired, which might say about my tactics as well.
What's your plan to crack this big wall of defense 6 that I've got here?
Well, in this turn, just a lot of countercharging. So on the right hand side, the Flame Bearers regen and countercharge the Overmaster. In the middle, the Succubi turn and countercharge Susan. Account of the fact they had absolutely no chance of doing anything to a Hellfane, but maybe could get some wounds on Susan. In the middle, the Molochs countercharge the Golems. The Abyssal Guard with 2-hand weapons head into the front of the Greater Obsidian Golem. Lower Abyssals countercharge the Gargoyles, and the Torch of Souls on my right-hand side into the flank of the Gargoyles as well, just to bring them into the party a little bit rather than being out on the outside. It's overkill, but it just brought them over. And the Molochs and Susan, Mighty Busu, head into the other unit, Lower Obsidian Golems. That Brew of Haste and the fact that she flies meant they could get in there. At least I was able to bring my units to the fight.
Yes, you've got almost everything in combat this turn, I think. Which is nice. And you've parked the Ifrit right in front of the Grotesques, which is less of an inconvenience than it used to be. But it's still a potential annoyance. And you've got them on 6 wounds now from the various shooting attacks. Now, I believe you were saying that you thought they were only defense 4 because we'd been previously talking about Abyssal half-breeds. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, yes. We'd been talking about them earlier, and so I just thought, oh yeah, fast thing with the half-breed. So I directed the Flame Bearers and the Ifrit against them, thinking this is the easy meat for all the fire attacks. I got some wounds, but not as many as I'd hoped.
Yes, and with their regeneration abilities as well. And not that many threats around here. They're probably going to get time to regenerate those wounds, with any luck.
Yes, yes.
You do manage to put a wound onto the Overmaster, though.
Which the Flame Bearers hit home.
Which, obviously, the main objective there is to stop something flying in some circumstances. In this instance, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference, but occasionally that's actually a good thing.
Well, in this instance, they didn't have anything better to do, so...
Yes, and here, Susan only takes 1 wound from the Succubus regiment, which is...
And the Succubi rolled loads and loads of hits and then completely whiffed on the wound roll.
Yeah, because if they'd managed to get lucky and kill Susan, there was a potential overrun into the flank of these golems here. Alas, 1 wound kind of stopped that idea in its tracks.
Absolute shambles.
Very unfortunate.
It's like, right, well, you've just cost yourself your own lives. Is that Hellfane's going to batter you now?
And here, in the Moloch versus Golem battle, these have gone up to 8 wounds. So, not enough to kill them
really
yet.
labouring the point, aren't they?
They sure are. And the lower... They lower Abyssals, these ones, with the double-handed weapons? Or Abyssal Guard?
They're Abyssal Guard.
Yeah, there we go.
They've got crushing 1.
Just a single wound.
Yeah, they typically take a couple of turns to get warmed up, so although they're hitting on 3s, they didn't bother scoring even an average number of hits.
And then over here, Busu, I believe she contributed 0 wounds to this combat.
Typically, yeah, she's very bad at hitting, so she didn't bother. But she's just there for the brutal.
Yes, which is helpful, and the Molochs did manage to inflict some wounds, as you can see. They're up to 6. And here the gargoyles obviously dead, because they're gargoyles and they were hit by something. That's usually what happens.
Yep.
So the gargoyles are gone, and we just got a glimpse into your neighbourhood there with a fast vehicle going by. And you can see I've only really got all my best units left now. The Immortal Guard and the Gargoyles are dead, but all the juicy stuff, all the big stuff is still alive. I don't think I've ever gone into a game with 3 Titans before, but it is a lot of fun. So, what's my plan from here? There's not that many options, actually. There's a lot of obvious counter charges to be done. There's not a whole lot of options with regards to Surge, because even though it looks like there could be all kinds of flanks open, it's pointless charging the flank of this unit, because they're going to be dead anyway with the attacks from this unit, most likely. Can't flank this unit, because I believe that if I turn, I can't actually make any kind of move while staying so close to this unit. I know they changed some of their withdrawing rules in an FAQ, but you don't have quite the freedom that you used to when there are nearby units, I think. So, if this was played incorrectly at all, then anyone in the chat, feel free to let me know, because it is one of the areas where I'm slightly unclear. But as far as I could tell, I can't just pivot this unit where it is and then surge into the flank there, because there are units too close in the current rules. Obviously,
that was my understanding, and what I convinced you of was that if you just withdrew and turned and stayed there, you were then ending your movement within an inch of a unit that you weren't charging.
Yes.
Not allowed to do it.
Yes. And here, the Hellfane obviously is going to be enough to finish off this Succubus unit. But what I really would have liked, if that unit wasn't so nearly dead anyway, would have been to withdraw with the Hellfane and find some way to get a flank on them. But I think the Succubus unit was probably blocking that off. But something like that is always worth considering, just to see if it's possible within the laws of measuring and your various geometry. And here, Bracky going to be charging into the Flame Bearers. Overmaster is going to be finishing off those Flame Bearers with any luck. I wasn't really sure what to do with the Grotesques at this point, because I could just bypass the Ifrit, because I'm pretty sure he's not mighty, is he? So I could have theoretically charged the Succubus unit, which are going to die anyway, the Molochs, which are going to die anyway, but it would get me closer to the rest of the battle. However, I decide that the Ifrit is actually really dangerous with its flame attack, so I might as well just use them to kill him, because they should be able to do it in 1 round. So, here we go, turn 3. You can see that the Ifrit only gets wavered, unfortunately, which means that the Grotesques are now stuck there for another turn. The Overmaster does kill off this unit, Susan actually joins in the charge on the flame bearers along with Bracky. So even though they're both hindered, they do manage to one-shot that unit, so the entire of Fire Team Alpha is dead. The Hellfane finishes off the Succubus unit, the Golems finish off the Molochs, and this entire half of the table is just full of big, juicy Abyssal Dwarf units, and no Abyssal units at all, apart from this pesky thing still alive. So that flank is mine, but it's not turn 5 yet. So when the triple points come in, am I going to have much left to kill to cash in on that? We'll see. The Greater Golem does not manage to kill this unit in one round. The Golems, with pondering countercharging the Busu there, but then worked out that they could have been flanked by this unit had they not killed her, which they may have done, and then they could have overrun into this unit, but I didn't really want to risk it because I want them to be kind of my blockade against this whole mess for a while, so didn't want to risk that. And that's how it's looking. So this side of the battlefield, pretty much clear, but the forces of the Abyss have still got some hitting power and some meat coming in from this side. The Hammer of Measured Force obviously is nothing to be sniffed at, considering most of my units that are alive now are defense 6. So that is going to be potentially paying dividends. But at this point, I assume you're not too confident looking at the units remaining, but you have still got the potential of some turn 5 triple points coming. So what's going on with your planning here?
Well, I think it was about this time I was telling you what a terrible mistake you'd made by killing most of my army before the turn 5 triple points. Clearly, you were actually losing this battle, even if it looked like you were thrashing me.
Yes, let's go with that. So in the chat, Basin says maybe it's a candidate for extended base sizing. The Hellfane, yes, if you're going to give it such a ridiculous long nose, I mean, look at that. It sticks out a good, it's like half of its base size again, just to the end of its nose. So giving it a longer base, I would be in favour of that. I wouldn't be opposed at all, even though it would probably make it worse in game because it would have a bigger flank to hit. I just think logically it makes sense. Even the Overmaster, all the Mantic Dragons actually, the tail, however you position them, I think it still overhangs the base. Not the same for the Mantic Giant though. It's actually a really good example of staying contained within its base. It's actually really good for that. At worst, you'd have like a tiny bit of its toe hanging off the base, which is fine. Even the arms are generally either really high up, so they just go above most other units, or they're fairly kind of contained within that space anyway. So they know how to do it. Turn 4 for the forces of the Abyss. So here we go. What is the plan going into this turn then? Because it's just before turn 5 when there are triple points available. Are you thinking kill stuff now? Are you actually actively going to hold off on killing anything that you could kill, looking at the impending turn 5?
Well, I thought it had fallen quite nicely for me in terms of the turn 5 triple points. Because it looked like I was going to be able to soften some things up and just a bit of positioning this round, ready for turn 5. So I was feeling quite good about it, actually.
Yes, because these 3 units are all potentially vulnerable. Because even though I've got more over here, it's not here. So these 3 units that are already damaged, and this one obviously just 1 point, but these 2 in particular, if you can get into position, they would be prime candidates for death in turn 5. Potentially.
Yeah, so you can see the lesser obsidian golems nearest the bottom of the screen are only on 4 wounds. So the Molochs and Mighty Busu are going to get another round of pounding on them, but they probably won't die this turn. The Tortured Souls potentially, I thought, could have flown over all of the combat and into the lesser obsidian golems on the right, who are on 8 wounds. There was a combination of things there. One, I wasn't confident they could actually do much damage at all, and they might just end up there getting hammered. And secondly was the fact that I thought, well, maybe that's definitely something I could finish off on turn 5. They're
true.
already softened up. They just need one more blow to finish them. So that's something to wait for turn 5.
Yes, so in the previous turn, I used my Ironcaster to heal up these golems, which in a normal game is fine, but it may actually have been worth allowing this unit to die in turn 4, because there's no way they're surviving multiple rounds when they're facing off against your whole army. So maybe healing this unit instead, and not healing them, and allowing them a bigger chance of dying in turn 4 could have been useful. Just something interesting to think about that wasn't really going through my mind particularly, because I was just concentrating on murdering things, and then when it came to just before turn 5, that's when I was going to start thinking about positioning. So you actually plough a lot into this unit now. So you've got Busu, you've got the Molochs, you've got the Tortured Souls who go in here rather than hopping over, and you're holding back your big hitter Hammer of Measured Force unit until turn 5, though. Probably a good idea, because I'm definitely not going to be able to kill them in this round. And this unit's still fighting against the Greater Golem.
You're going to come to me. You're going to come to me over there. You've
Yes.
got all these flying and cavalry things on that side, so I thought they'd come to me.
Yes, very likely. And let's see what damage is inflicted then. So not much on the Greater Golem. As expected, doesn't take too much more. However, this horde of golems is dead, which does free up some juicy turn 5 options for you now. Because this golem is going to be pretty much locked down here, whether he kills that unit or not. He's still limited on his pivoting and moving around as well, because the Tortured Souls are so close. These golems are heavily damaged, and they're kind of stuck within range of your units as well. So there could be a lot of points on offer in the next round. And what I choose to do in my next turn, was it wise? I don't know, but I decided that this unit was a really big threat to the flank of this. So I thought the Tortured Souls could just fly away. These guys would probably sidestep to allow this unit a flank charge into the Greater Obsidian Golem, which would guarantee a kill, basically. So I decided I was going to lock down this unit with something cheaper than a Greater Obsidian Golem, and that's going to be Bracky, who's going to charge into them just to lock them in there, because obviously he's a big, mighty character, and he's going to be wounding them in combat as well, so they're definitely not going to be charging through him. And then down here, the Ironcaster is, I believe, going to use Fireball and try to finish off these Molochs, because that would be one less headache. Everything else is just going to position itself to countercharge whatever attacks me in turn 5, so then in my turn 5 I can hopefully cash in on the triple points as well, with the Hellfane and the Overmaster and the Grotesques. So, turn 4. Susan finishes off the Ifrit, because even though it would be tempting to leave it for turn 5 because it's already so wounded, I thought that thing can actually do some damage and could maybe even kill off like the Grotesques with a lucky roll, so I'm not even going to risk leaving that thing alive. And there's Bracky gone in there. The Golem and the Hellfane double charge that unit of Abyssal Guard and do kill them, so that's one less thing to worry about next turn, and then the Greater Golem turns to face the Tortured Souls, so we'll see if that can survive. Also, if Bracky is killed by this unit, the overrun is going to be about 5 inches, I think, there, which is a risk I'm quite willing to take. And Bracky does a little bit of damage there. The Ironcaster went out and did a bit of Fireball, didn't do much though. And so my Ironcaster here, I wasn't really thinking this through very well. So the Ironcaster, I'm not looking at him as something that you're going to want to kill in the next round, because he's not as expensive as some of the other units, and charging him to him first to try and get an overrun into the golems, it looks like a decent distance, but what I'm not factoring in is what you actually do, which is a double charge here, and we'll see in a moment how that greatly reduces the overrun distance required, making it a much more palatable option. So this is your big turn, triple points available here. So look at that, that's barely an overrun at all because of this double charge. Without the double charge, it would look like 3 or 4, probably 4 inches to get in from about there.
It's the pièce de résistance.
Yes.
Only am I making sure of getting that kill on the Ironmaster, but I'm on the Ironcaster, but I'm making sure the Molochs are right on that side to get the overrun. It'd be beautiful.
Yes, that's going to be a nice move there, assuming this guy actually dies. If he doesn't die, then it won't look quite so clever. But Tortured Souls...
I did take a lot of his nerve first and thought it
yes.
would be able to do it.
You decide that you're going to send the Tortured Souls in here and not consider the possibility of any kind of overrun through Brecci, which is conceivable, but it was on the slight long shot side. They do kill Brecci, however, so maybe they could have looked at that. The Ironcaster is killed, so that's 2 units that are fairly cheap by my army standards, but I don't have really anything cheap left alive anyway. Only the gargoyles in this army are cheap, everything else is pretty pricey. So we're going to look at the overrun now, which does take them in to the lesser obsidian golems who are heavily wounded. It's hindered, so it's not a guarantee they're going to die because they are inspired there. And they do die though. So that is quite a hefty batch of triple points that have been racked up there. And I'm just going to have to kill as much as possible on my turn 5 now to try and counteract that. So I'm pretty confident I can kill these Molochs because, I mean, look at all this. There's just death staring down at them. Tortured Souls I could probably kill if I focus on them. And probably with a double charge there. But that's not actually going to be possible because I want to double charge the Molochs. So that means I'm going to have to move this guy away and not charge the Tortured Souls at all, because I'm not confident that one of these units on their own are going to kill the Molochs. I can't see exactly how many wounds are on there, but it's not a huge amount, so a mediocre roll, and they are inspired by Busu as well. So, my turn 5, I move this guy out the way. Forgo taking on the Tortured Souls, even though I've got a chance of killing them. Decide that double charge into the Molochs is the most important thing I can do this turn to get the triple points for it, and that is successful. So that's clawed back some of the losses from your turn 5 there. Susan has just moved in. The Hellfane has charged into the Horde there just to soften them up so I can kill them, finish them off later. And that's that. So I've got lots of expensive units left. So even with the triple points that you accomplished in the previous turn for you, I'm still feeling fairly confident. The Golem isn't actually looking this way, the Hellfane isn't really looking this way. It's just 2 units that just stick out over their base. Mantic, get your life in order. On to turn 6 then. So,
well, let's just quickly summarise what happened in turn 5 then, seeing as it was a crucial part of the game. So I managed to kill Brecci, the Ironcaster, and the horde of Luricidium golems, and you only managed to kill 1 horde of Molochs.
Yes, so you've killed over 500 points of units in your turn 5, so that's going to triple up. So that's a significant amount of points, and I believe that Molochs are just over 200, aren't they?
550.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. They're about 250 when you add the items. So
yeah, so you've successfully managed to get the favour of the Abyssal Gods there in turn 5 and probably close the gap significantly in victory points in this game. And we weren't actually working it all out on the fly.
Any reference to...
What was that?
But I was definitely pleased about having gained that advantage at that point and possibly the moral victory.
Yes, you did play the scenario nicely there. Under the circumstances.
In the eyes of the gods, I had pleased the gods.
Yes. Have you pleased them enough, though? Let's find out. So, turn 6 for the Forces of the Abyss. And there's not a huge amount of options for you here. So really, you can just countercharge against these really high defense units and pretty much just bounce off them for the most part. The Tortured Souls, however, decide that they're going to fly away. And they don't want to just
bear in mind that obviously the Great Obsidian Golem is facing the wrong way, so they would have had to go into his front if they tried charging him.
Yes, and the Tortured Souls,
unattractive.
They're not going to make a hindered kill against a Great Obsidian Golem or a horde of Grotesques. It's not going to happen.
9 hindered attacks is not going to do it.
So all they're doing by sitting there is just guaranteeing their own demise, really. So they decide to fly away, which means that I've only got one option to attack them, which I'll come to in a moment. So a bit of damage done to the Hellfane, but it's a Hellfane, so it's not dead. So what can I do? I've got to kill these 2 units, really, and Busu is hiding behind them as well, so I can't really kill her in the last round, so I think she's going to live regardless. I'm going to throw as much as I can into this horde, because they're not that heavily damaged yet. I think they're only on about 5 or 6 wounds. Susan is the only thing I've got that can attack the Tortured Souls, so she's going to charge them, and then I believe the best I can do is a triple charge here, with a hindered one coming from the Grotesques. So the Hellfane would slide down, Great Obsidian Golem into the centre, Grotesques into this side. I was weighing up statistically which of these 2 units would be better, the Grotesques or the Overmaster, and I decided just the number of attacks from the Grotesques, since they would have both been hindered, I thought that was the better option.
There's a great deal of discussion about this, because what you really wanted was to send all 4 big units into them. And I was like, they won't fit. There's no way they will not all fit.
The only way they would have fit would have been if the Grotesques had been further over this way, and the Overmaster had been here, so that the 3 smaller based units could have been shuffled up at this end, and then the long one could have been hanging off the edge. That's the only way it would have worked. But the way they're positioned, that was not an option. Or if one of them had a flank, for example. But alas, no. So the triple charge does go in, and they do manage to kill the horde, because that was a lot of really juicy attacks going in there. And Susan did actually kill the Tortured Souls, which for me was feeling quite important, because we hadn't calculated the victory points at this stage. So we had a rough idea that it wasn't going to be vastly one-sided after your massive turn 5 with the triple points on offer. So I thought it was quite important that Susan tried to take out that unit, and she actually did it in one go.
I was staggered.
Yeah, so had that been the difference...
It was right up there with Champ Longdong going down in one turn. But that bloody flying thing, taking out a unit, an unharmed unit in one go. Unbelievable.
It was beautiful.
Outraged.
So we then surveyed the battlefield and did some calculations. Now I'm thinking at this point it's going to be close, because you got that massive turn 5 where you got triple points for multiple units. I only killed 1 unit, but everything I've got left is really expensive. So we start the calculations, and I've got pictures of the calculations now. So the total of victory points that I achieved was 2,830. So that includes the triple points for the Molochs that were killed. And remember, we're 2,500 points total here. So with that thing being the only one left alive. And then the kill point total for the Forces of the Abyss was 2,285. So all the expensive units left alive was enough to get the victory for the Abyssal Dwarfs. And that is that. So I did have a brief moment where I thought, wait a minute, have I only doubled it rather than tripled, and was furiously doing some maths on the way home. But it turned out it was correct first time. So Abyssal Dwarfs stake their claim in the Abyssal homeland. The gods may have taken a slight shine to the Forces of the Abyss, though, during the game, after their stellar performance during the... what would you even call it? During the red fire moon that was high in the sky at that time, perhaps?
Yeah, we've got to call that, or the bonus round.
Yes, so I would like to think that the next round will be deeper, the next chapter in this campaign will be deeper into Abyssal territory. The Abyssal Dwarves are pushed right in there, but I would say that the Forces of the Abyss could perhaps gain some kind of cheeky little bonus from the gods. Something maybe a little bit random, perhaps.
Thought crosses my mind every time I'm designing a scenario.
Yes, I think a nice little random bonus popping up at some point during the game for the Forces of the Abyss would be nice and in keeping with the campaign for their performance during that round there. I think that would be interesting. And in terms of the army lists we brought here, so my list, the Abyssal Dwarves, it's a lot of Titans. Against certain armies, it's probably going to be a slight overkill, because nearly all my units are bringing multiple crushing strength and there's some thunderous charge in there as well. If I'm against, for example, a spam of scarecrows or zombies or something, that's just going to be a total waste. And maybe it's too much. I didn't have any artillery. I didn't have that much speed. I didn't bring the half-breeds. I didn't bring many casters. I had the one iron caster. I didn't bring a hex caster. I feel like he's a bit too expensive now to put weakness on him, which is the whole reason I want to use him. So when I was looking at this list, I thought anything I'm going to leave out to put him in is difficult. I struggle with unlocks in this list because I only have expensive units. I don't have any slave orcs. I don't have any slave rats. And let's see, I've got decimators I can bring, but I don't feel like they're quite as juicy as I would like them to be. Mortars, since they were nerfed, aren't quite as appealing as just big flappy monsters and big giant defense 6 things. What do you feel about your list? Obviously it did pretty well at Battle Masters, and now it's had this follow-up game.
Well, I was hoping, because I mean, almost all of my stuff is defense 4, so I was really hoping that your crushing strength would be a waste of points here as well. That did not prove to be the case, because it just makes you wound on 1s, which is really devastating. So yeah, it felt like your army punched really hard, and when my army tried to retaliate, it just sort of bounced off to an extent. I was pleased that I managed to get the big points on round 5. You know, played the scenario. Disappointed with 1 or 2 things that died before I might have expected them to. Would I have done anything differently? Well, I suppose I look back at the turn 2 charges where you presented yourself to me, and I rushed in like a pubescent schoolboy. You know?
Like a true Abyssal, though.
Well, yeah, but sometimes some. I don't know what I'd have done differently, but I do wonder if rushing in for those charges on turn 2 was a bit impetuous.
Perhaps, because it did allow me to get my fangs right into Fireteam Alpha without worrying about flank charges on me. So, for example, would I have charged my Overmaster into the Flamebearers if there was an Archfiend staring directly into the flank? Probably not. So it definitely would have changed things.
I didn't get much use out of Fireteam Alpha this game, whereas most of my previous games they've done some good work.
Although
you came at me hard and fast, which was the right thing to do.
The threat of Fireteam Alpha, though, does kind of dictate what your opponents can do in some instances. So my entire game plan was built around shutting them down. So certain other things, maybe I didn't give as much attention to. So, for example, everything on this side, all I really had to deal with that was a slight Susan distraction and then dropping some gargoyles in front of them and then hoping to hold them off with the difficult terrain. So I wasn't really trying to outmatch anything there. I was just hoping to hold them up and use the environment and then crush this side, which is where Fireteam Alpha is. So I was very eager to get in there and start squashing them. Which meant, though,
I think
Go ahead.
It worked quite well in a way, because the Horde of Lower Abyssals with the Hammer of Measured Force never really brought it to bear. Sort of got tangled up a bit between. They'd got Molochs on one side, Abyssal Guard on the other, and no gap to charge through. Only got bracket because you came to me.
Yes, that is true. I could have even held some stuff back at that point, but I was conscious about keeping the Greater Obsidian Golem alive, who is more expensive than Bracky, so that was what was going through my mind there. So yeah, I could have theoretically just moved backwards in that turn and given you less kill options. And let's see what else was interesting about this game. So your little flying hero, Busu, was a pretty good deterrent for Susan, I think, with the duelist special rule. Makes her actually a bit of a threat. And then that multiple brutal, did actually help you out on a couple of occasions. But I haven't seen her used in Abyssal armies very often. So is there a particular reason?
Oh, she's expensive, I think, what you'd look at. I mean, you sort of compare her to the Seductress, which is the basic flying succubi character thing. The advantage she has is that she inspires everything, not just succubi. And she has the brutal. The disadvantage is she can't take any spells, whereas Seductress is great for casting Bane Chant. So when I've taken her as a Seductress, that's her primary role, is to inspire succubi and Bane Chant them, because they have no crushing of their own.
How did you feel about Bane Chant on the Warlock in this game? Because usually he's firing off his firebolts, isn't he?
Yeah, it's questionable whether it's a waste of points, because I took it on Battle Masters and I think I maybe used it once, or even I thought about using it once and wasn't able to. One or the other, but either way, in 4 games, it was only half an opportunity, and I didn't use it in this game either because he shot once and then got charged down.
What would you have looked into buying with the extra points that you could have saved on that Bane Chant then? Who would you have upgraded?
It's 30 points, so someone could have had the Brew of Strength. Maybe the Succubi.
That would have actually been really helpful, specifically against this list, because there were times where you had a lot of attacks going in, but often they were hindered, and then they didn't have the crushing strength to get through that just blob of defense 6.
Yeah.
And my list was a little bit light on artifacts, just because it was 2,500 points, and I thought I'm going to try and cram in as much of my cool stuff as possible. I couldn't fit Infernox in, unfortunately, even though I really like the ridiculous classic mantic metal model that I use for him. And very light on artifacts, in fact. Normally, a unit I like to put them on would be half-breeds. They weren't featured here. Lesser Obsidian Golems are typically a unit you might want to stick an artifact on, because obviously they're going to be sticking around for a while, so they're likely to make use of it, more so than the half-breeds who could just be easily shot off before they get to use their artifact. So overall, I quite like this list. It'd be interesting to see how people would set up against this army, knowing that there's so much high defense and so much hitting power in it. What kind of strategy people would use against it. It's fairly low number of units though, so certain scenarios that could be a problem, and not that great mobility on some of it. But there's only a few decent speed units in there. Gargoyles can just die instantly. Overmaster, Grotesques, and Brachy, and Susan are the source of speed. 2 of those, of course, would never be able to do anything with an objective. So certain scenarios could be a struggle, but overall, I think pretty juicy. Anyway, until next time, thanks audience for sticking with this. Don't forget to like the video, by the way. I noticed not many people have yet, which is frankly an outrage with all the tactical insight you're getting from both sides of the table. And thanks to Ian for joining me for this in-depth probing analysis.
Welcome. I have liked the video.
Good.
Even though I did not like the result.
Yes, just to clarify that. So before I go, I'd just like to personally thank the patrons for this channel. So that would be Graham, Guy, Roshi, Brad, Kim, Raccoon, John, Cedar, Nippleless, Simon, Kevin, and David. So thanks to all of you for keeping this channel afloat as a tactical hub and overall great place to get some top-notch wargaming content during these turbulent times. And don't forget to check out all the links in the description, all the various ways you can throw money at me or follow me on social media. There's Facebook groups, Discord servers, Twitter, and all that nonsense down there. And I believe Ian has a... Is your podcast actually active currently, the Frantic Gamers, or is that still on hiatus?
We're not actively podcasting, no, but I would like to say that everyone should forget all this Kings of War nonsense and get right on Dead Zone 3rd Edition, because it's going to be the greatest thing ever.
It does look spicy, 3rd Edition Dead Zone, so I'm definitely going to be leaping straight onto that. I've pre-ordered the rulebook already, so looking forward to getting in some games of that very soon. So, thanks once again, audience, and all that remains to be said is... Good night out there, whatever you are.